some of my favorite things that you do is when you actually leave the numbers alone. Dan talked about it when you did your tape. It was like, who has a show? And there's so many times that like you bring up like black things, right? Minority things. They're just being honest, right?
On
it's
our
like,
show, you mean.
Right after the games and the teams were picked, I was like, okay, I just want to take this time. I'm supposed to be picking the games. So it's like, I want to take this time to talk about Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah. The first black quarterback matchup. And I want to talk about their fathers, right? And I want to bring attention to the fact that they were in the homes and they did support them and they did teach them how to be great leaders. And you know what you get when you do that? Why they got to be black? Well, because they are. Yeah. Right. And there was a time that they didn't get the opportunities or they weren't thought to have the leadership or the mental capacity to play the position. This is why it's historic. So, so you say all those things. I do want to get to a point to where we don't have to point out that you're a woman. Right. But I think sometimes it's our conditioning that we've been conditioned that women do go sit over there and have that conversation while men sit over here and have another conversation. But when Dan says, like, what show has a woman that can do that? That's just actually true. When you start to talk the X's and O's, when you start to talk cover 3, cover 2, and all those different things, I'm like, she's dead on. Like, she's right. Like, there's so many times, like, if me and you miss a call, we're probably going to talk over one another with the same.
Oh my God, you guys don't even know how often this. So we have these like calls before our show where we kind of are like, yeah, he's going to hit this side of it. Here's my take on the Ravens or whatever. We're like obsessed with the Ravens defense for some reason. And literally the producer is like, Ryan said the same thing. He also wanted to talk about the Ravens simulated pressure versus Cincinnati. And then Ryan's always like, she can have it. But it really is kind of crazy.
What gave you the confidence, Mina, to move into that? Because someone who is as intelligent as you are and understands the analytics and can speak about them in the way that you do, they want to stay in that comfortable wheelhouse of, okay, if I stay here, people won't think I'm trying to be a player. But you've gotten more and more comfortable and are so good at speaking to the X's and O's and what you see on film. What gave you the confidence to move more into that?
Getting outside of numbers, whether it's talking about black things, as you said, or, which, by the way, I feel like it's very important for me and not just the black men on our show to talk about those things. It's important for me to not just be this person and only talk about this stuff. And then as far as like the football side of it, yeah, it really was just like getting support from you guys whenever I did it, honestly. Whenever I tried to dip my toe or just kind of expand my scope a little bit, having my teammates, having Laura Rutledge, who's the best host on earth, Dan, Marcus, you have my backs, gives me the confidence to just do it again.
You kind of touched on where I wanted to go next. You just beat me to it, which you do often, especially if they call you first for the production meeting. But whether it's sexual assault, domestic violence, minority coaching hires, owners misbehaving or treating people in a certain way and not being punished the same as players are, you've always been extremely vocal about those things, and not in a flippant, disrespectful way, but in a true analytical, fair way, but also that breathes life into a show. And I don't mean in making a show exciting, that some of these things are bigger than snapping the football. Some of these things are about changing people's lives or about putting people in positions and situations that they can never recover from certain traumas. And you've been vocal about those things. You haven't been scared to speak about them, but that does come with a backlash. Yeah. And you mentioned you had the thought, do I speak about this? Do I talk about this? What has the journey been like for you at getting to a point to when they call you, and I've been on a call with you before where it wasn't a topic, and you're like, no, we need to talk about this, or this is important, or this should be said, and you step up in that manner.
Instead of thinking about the backlash or thinking about maybe like, I don't know, people I need to impress won't like this, or it's better to be safe and neutral, I always, whenever the story comes up like that, I always think about the person who needs to see it talked about. You know, I think about if it's a story about sexual assault, or I think about maybe the woman who's turning on ESPN and sees that it's not being talked about or that people talking about don't care. If it's a story about black coaches being passed over yet again, it felt like only black players, and this is true of the NFL, we're talking about it. And I really think it's important for them to turn on TV and say like, oh, it's not like other people care about this. Other people are want to draw attention to it. Other people have done the work or are noticing these trends or have reported on it. So I just think about that all the time when I try to like think about like, why do I want to talk about any of this stuff at all? Because you're right, it's not always fun and it doesn't always go well. But it just kind of feels like imperative to like represent those people, I guess.